Whoever wants to raise the child can pay for it themselves, I said. The sentence came out loud enough to make the entire law firm fall silent. Even my ex-husband's attorney looked up as if he couldn't believe the woman who had sat quietly agreeing to everything for the past 3 years of marriage would dare to say something like that. My name is Clara and I'm 34. This is the first year I've decided to stop being the good person in everyone else's eyes and start being fair to myself. Across from me was Ethan, my ex-husband, a man I once thought I would spend the rest of my life with. He sat with his legs crossed, looking utterly bored, as if our divorce was a trivial errand he just had to sign off on before rushing to more important matters. There wasn't a hint of regret in his eyes, only annoyance that I wouldn't sign the agreement his family had prepared. The terms were simple in their minds. I was to give up full custody of our 5-year-old son Leo to his family. Because the family heir, they argued, must stay with the family. In return, I was still expected to cover half of Leo's expenses, his prestigious private school tuition, the nanny's salary, his health insurance, and any special costs. And I wasn't the one who had the affair. It sounds unbelievable, doesn't it? But Ethan's family never saw anything wrong with it. To them, I was the daughter-in-law from a middle-class family. Even though at the time of our marriage I was a VP of finance at a major real estate investment firm with a salary double that of Ethan's in my mother-in-law's eyes, I was just a lucky girl who married into a good home. It wasn't long after the wedding that I learned what that good home really was, a mansion that was luxurious on the outside but filled with control, condescension, and a talent for shifting every burden onto someone else. Ethan was the only son raised to be completely spoiled. He got whatever he wanted. When his 2 business ventures failed, his parents were always there to bail him out. I became the financial pillar that no one would acknowledge but everyone quietly exploited. I helped pay off the debt on his high-end furniture gallery. I helped with the mortgage payments on a condo he claimed was an investment property. I covered my mother-in-law's medical bills when she was sick. I paid the salary of the family's driver. Even the tuition for his sister's daughter's private tutoring was eventually passed on to me, because Clara is the most well-off. At the time, I thought helping was how you built a family. Now I know it was just me financing an entire household until they thought it was my duty. The day I found out Ethan had another woman, everything shattered in a single night. It wasn't just sweet text messages or a photo of them together. It was an appointment confirmation from a well-known obstetrician. He wasn't just cheating. He was having a baby with his mistress. When I confronted him, Ethan didn't even have the decency to look guilty. He just sighed and said, "Well, it's come to this. It's better if we separate. My mother can raise Leo and you can just keep helping with the expenses like you always have. He's still your son after all." I remember standing there looking at the man in front of me and genuinely wondering how I could have ever loved someone like him. Today in this law firm, he was the same. No remorse, no guilt, and absolutely certain that I would yield. His lawyer slid the documents toward me. "Miss Clara, regarding the child's expenses, if you continue to contribute the agreed-upon $10,000 a month, it will make things smoother for everyone." I held up my hand to stop him and slowly pushed the documents back. "I'm not paying." Everyone froze. My mother-in-law sitting on the other side of the table, her face turned pale. "What do you mean Leo is your son?" I met her gaze and replied calmly, "Yes, Leo is my son. But if you're so desperate to fight for custody, then by all means raise him yourselves. I will not give this family another dime." "Clara," my father-in-law slammed his hand on the table. "Don't be unreasonable." I let out a soft laugh, the first genuine one in months. Unreasonable. The man who cheated on me, who is taking his pregnant mistress to the doctor, comes back to take my son and still expects me to foot the bill. Is that what your family calls reasonable? Ethan's face tensed. "Watch what you say." "I've been watching what I say for years," I retorted. "Today I'd like to speak the truth." I pulled out all my evidence from a file and laid it across the table. Bank transfer slips, loan receipts, expense logs, and the photograph from that day. The day he held another woman's hand as they walked into an OB/GYN clinic. The expressions around the table began to change one by one. Since we got married, I have paid for nearly all of this family's major expenses. And if we're getting a divorce, we'll do it according to the law, not according to your family's sense of entitlement. I took a deep breath and said the words I had practiced in my mind for so many nights. I am petitioning for sole custody of our son. I will not be paying any alimony or child support to the father, and I will be taking legal action to reclaim every dollar of the debt owed to me as documented here. The room was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning hum. Then, my mother-in-law shot up from her chair. You're trying to destroy my son, I looked at her, my voice perfectly steady. No. The person who destroyed your son was you, by raising him to believe that every woman in the world exists to bail him out. That day, I walked out of that conference room without looking back. And I had no idea that cutting them off financially would be the first step toward the complete collapse of my ex-husband's family and the unearthing of a truth they had tried so hard to bury. When I first married into Ethan's family, many people envied me. A large house in a wealthy suburb, 2 European cars in the driveway, a full-time chauffeur, a mother-in-law who was always impeccably dressed, a father-in-law who played golf with major CEOs. The exterior was so polished it made everyone believe I had married into a dynasty, a princess in a billionaire's mansion. But outsiders never knew how skillfully that glittering facade was used to cover up the deep cracks within. I still remember the day Ethan and I went to see my parents to ask for their blessing. My father asked him directly, "Are you ready to take care of my daughter?" Ethan answered with confidence, "Sir, I may not be perfect, but I will never let Clara face her struggles alone." I believed him completely. But less than 6 months after the wedding, I started to see the truth piece by piece. Ethan's imported furniture gallery wasn't as profitable as he claimed. The grand house had a second mortgage I knew nothing about. My father-in-law had co-signed a bad loan for a friend, and their cash flow was a mess. My mother-in-law was obsessed with appearances and refused to cut back on any expenses. And Ethan had zero financial discipline. The first time he asked to borrow money from me, he looked stressed and told me it was a temporary problem, just $50, 000, to keep the gallery afloat. I gave it to him without a second thought, believing that's what a husband and wife do, they help each other. That $50, 000 became $100, 000. That $100, 000, turned into $500,000. When I asked about repayment, he would say softly, "As soon as the business picks up, I'll pay you back." The business never picked up, but the amount I had to shell out grew every year. It's strange, isn't it? When we want to be deceived, we don't even require a good lie. A promise we want to believe is enough. I tried to be the perfect daughter-in-law. I took my mother-in-law to her doctor's appointments, paid the premiums on my father-in-law's health insurance, bought groceries for the house, and managed the books for Ethan's gallery for free. Even if I got home from my own job at 9 p.m., I would stay up to sort out his tax paperwork. What I got in return wasn't gratitude, but comments like, "It's just a little bit of work. Clara's good with numbers anyway," or, "If it weren't for our daughter-in-law, the family would be in trouble. You're part of the family now, don't be so petty." These people were masters at making exploitation feel like trust. When I got pregnant with Leo, I thought things might get better. I hoped having a child would finally make Ethan grow up. But the opposite happened. He started staying out later, claiming he had to find clients, network, and attend events with friends. One night, when I was 7 months pregnant, I waited up for him until 1 a.m. He didn't answer his phone. Finally, a short text came through, "Staying over with a client. Don't wait up." That night, I sat alone in our massive cold bedroom, rubbing my belly and crying silently. After Leo was born, Ethan's enthusiasm lasted only a few months. As Leo grew, he reverted to his old self, leaving the baby with his mother, the nanny, and leaving me to pay for everything. I was the mother who had to wake up at 5 a.m. to pump milk before heading to a full day of meetings, only to come home to care for my son and endure passive-aggressive remarks from my in-laws like, "This is what happens when a disdaning today. Mother works so much. She never has enough time for her child." I remember one night vividly, when Leo was a little over 2. He had a high fever in the middle of the night. I rushed him to the emergency room myself because Ethan was too drunk to drive. As I followed her to the car, my mother-in-law said, "Boys need to be tough. Don't raise him to be so delicate." I turned and looked at her, but I was too exhausted to argue. I had been silent for years, so silent that everyone assumed I would never fight back. Until the day I found a woman's necklace in Ethan's car. It definitely wasn't mine. I never wore that style of jewelry. More importantly, it carried a faint scent of a perfume that didn't belong to any woman in our house. I placed it on his dresser and waited to ask him about it directly. Ethan glanced at the necklace for a split second before answering with a straight face. "A client must have left it behind." I pressed him. "What client gets in your personal car and takes off her necklace?" He immediately became defensive. "Can you stop being so neurotic, Clara? I'm tired from work." That was the first time my intuition screamed that something was deeply wrong. I started paying closer attention. He would shower the moment he got home. His phone was always face down. He set a new passcode and would frequently step out onto the balcony to take calls. He never took me to social events anymore. 3 months later, I saw a woman's name flash on his phone screen while he was in the shower. Mia. The text was short, but it pierced my heart instantly. The doctor said everything looks healthy today, Dad. Don't worry. My hands went cold. I stood there for a long time, rereading the sentence over and over as if my brain refused to process the pain. But eventually it was too clear to deny. A few days later, I took a day off work and followed him. I saw it with my own eyes. Ethan got out of his car and opened the door for a young, sweet-faced college student. She was in the early stages of pregnancy. His hand rested protectively on her back. The smile on the face of a man who had never once woken up to take his own son for a vaccination was so warm and tender for another woman. I stood across the street, feeling as if I had been ripped from my own world. It was then I realized the most painful thing wasn't the betrayal, but the realization that someone who never had time for you had all the time in the world for someone else. I didn't run over and slap him. I didn't scream or demand an explanation. I simply took out my phone, took pictures as evidence, and turned back. Because in that moment, I began to understand that to get back at people like this, emotions were useless. Only cold, hard facts would work. And I had no idea that the truth I was about to uncover wouldn't just destroy my marriage, but would also strip away every mask that family wore. Her name was Mia. I knew that from the text message and confirmed it from the patient sign-in sheet at the clinic that day. She was 24, a student at Ethan's alma mater, nearly a decade younger than him. She was petite with a sweet face that would make anyone feel protective. But I didn't hate her instantly as one might expect. I was angrier at Ethan. A married man who gives another woman hope to the point of getting her pregnant is the one who bears the primary responsibility. Still, I wasn't naive enough to believe Mia was entirely innocent. In the following week, I began to gather information quietly. I'm not an impulsive person, and my career in finance taught me that no one can hide the truth forever, especially not people who are careless with money. I reviewed the business accounts I used to help Ethan manage and found a series of unusual cash withdrawals over the past 8 months. There were also rental payments for a luxury apartment made out to a small corporation that, with a little digging, I easily traced back to Mia. Ethan wasn't just seeing her. He was housing her, buying her things, paying for her prenatal care, and transferring money to her account every month. And with what money? With money from the business I had bailed out. With money from a line of credit the family was using to stay afloat. And in part with the money I had given him, thinking it was to pay off business creditors. I sat staring at the bank statements until 2 a.m. My fists clenched so tightly they ached, but my heart felt strangely calm. Sometimes the pain runs so deep it goes beyond tears, leaving only a cold numbness. 2 days later, I received a call from an unknown number. "Is this Clara?" The voice on the other end was a woman soft and hesitant with every word. I answered cautiously. After a moment of silence, the other person said something that made my grip on the phone tighten. "My name is Mia. I need to talk to you." I wasn't surprised that this day would come, only that it came so soon. We agreed to meet at a small coffee shop behind a private hospital. I intentionally chose a public place and arrived early. When Mia walked in, I could see the anxiety in her eyes. She was dressed simply, not at all like the flashy, confident mistress, who felt no remorse. She sat across from me, her hands clutching her purse. "I'm sorry to bother you. Just say what you need to say," I replied. Mia looked down for several seconds before looking up, her eyes red. "I only just found out the truth. That you and Ethan aren't really separated." I raised an eyebrow slightly, not in surprise, but because I wanted to see what she would say next. "He told me you were only living together for our son's sake, that you'd been separated for a long time. He even said you were seeing someone new." I let out a soft, humorless laugh. "And you believed him?" Tears welled in Mia's eyes. "At first, yes. I believed him because he was so good to me, he took care of everything. I'm all alone in this city, I have no one. He was always there to help, and then I made a mistake." I looked at her slightly rounded belly and felt a heavy weight in my chest. There was more than one victim in this story. "So why come to me now?" Mia took a breath. "Because 3 days ago, I overheard him on the phone with his mother. He said once the divorce was settled, the family would take his firstborn son, and as for my baby, they would figure out if they could just end things with a monthly payment." I froze. Even knowing how selfish that family was, the coldness of their calculations was still shocking. "He really said that," Mia nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "His mother even said that a woman like me could only be a surrogate, not someone who could ever join their family." That sentence reminded me of my own early days of marriage. In the end, whether it was me or Mia to that family, all women were just tools to be used for a specific situation. I was silent for a moment before asking directly, "What do you want from me?" Mia bit her lip. "I want to leave him, but I'm scared. I have no money, nowhere to go, and I don't know what to do. I'm not asking you for help because you're the wife, but because I think you're the only one who can see this situation more clearly than I can." Her answer made me see her in a new light. She may have been the other woman in my life, but now she was about to be discarded just like me. I asked her several more questions when they started seeing each other details about the money the apartment Ethan rented for her, and any messages, voice memos, or other evidence she had. Mia cooperated, fully sharing everything as if she too wanted to tear down this facade of lies. Before we parted, I told her simply, "I'm not forgiving you, Mia, but I won't let the same man destroy two women and walk away unscathed." She looked at me through her tears and bowed her head in thanks. That day, I went home with a flash drive. On it were voice recordings, bank transfer records, photos, and the most crucial piece of evidence, a recording of my mother-in-law telling Mia, "Just have the baby first, then we'll talk. Don't think you're getting any official status out of this. I'll accept my grandchild, but I won't accept its mother." I listened to that sentence 3 times, then slowly put down my phone. Finally, I saw the whole picture. Ethan didn't love Mia. His family didn't want to raise Leo out of love. They just wanted to maintain their image, secure the firstborn grandson, and continue to use my money. From that moment on, all my hesitation vanished. This divorce wouldn't be a quiet departure. It would be a complete and total settlement of all accounts of money, of my child, and of my dignity. Many people think that when a woman is betrayed, the first thing she does is break down crying or go after the other woman. But for me, after learning the whole truth, I did the one thing Ethan's family feared the most. I opened my laptop and started a spreadsheet. If you asked what skill saved me the most, the answer wouldn't be patience, my love for my son, or positive thinking. It would be my meticulous attention to detail with numbers and my habit of saving every single receipt. I opened old folders organized by year, starting from the year I married Ethan. Transfer slips, loan agreements, copies of checks, tax returns, medical bills, Leo's tuition receipts, car payments I helped make. Even the receipt for reupholstering the living room furniture because my mother-in-law said the old fabric looked dated, I had it all. I systematically listed every item, dividing them into 3 categories. 1. Money I transferred to Ethan, and his business documented as loans. 2. Money I paid on behalf of his family with text messages or witnesses to confirm. 3. Shared child-rearing costs that I had covered almost entirely on my own. When I calculated the final total, I sat motionless for a long time. The number on the screen exceeded $2.5 million. $2.5 million, not including interest, not including the opportunities I had lost, and not including the emotional cost of being used as the family's personal ATM. I let out a dry laugh. If I had invested that money myself, I could have owned another condo by now or opened the coffee shop I'd always dreamed of. But no. I had used it to plug the leaks in a family that had never seen my worth. The next day, I met with a female attorney named Miss Albright. She was a college alumna who specialized in family law and asset litigation. She had invited me to lunch several times, but I'd never had the time. When I called and told her I wanted to consult about a divorce, her tone became serious instantly. We met in her office. I laid the files on her desk one by one. Miss Albright had only been looking through them for a few minutes when she looked up at me. "Clara," she said, "you're not just getting divorced. You're in a position to sue for the recovery of significant assets." I listened intently. "Your evidence is excellent. Many of these items are clearly marked as loans. Some were transfers to save your husband's business, which he acknowledged. As for your son, if you want sole custody, you have a much stronger case, financial stability, a consistent income, and proof that you are the primary caregiver." "But they'll argue about the environment," I said. "The big house, the school being nearby, the grandmother being available to care for him." Miss Albright smiled faintly. "A big house is less important than a quality caregiver. And if we can prove the child's father was unfaithful, is financially irresponsible, and exhibits unstable behavior, you are not at a disadvantage at all." I exhaled slowly, feeling as if a weight was being lifted from my chest stone by stone. I wasn't afraid of being alone. I was afraid of losing Leo. Miss Albright made a few more notes. "Is there anything else his family is hiding?" I hesitated for a moment before telling her the entire story about Mia handing her copies of some of the evidence. She listened to the end and then summarized it concisely. "It's good you didn't engage them emotionally. This evidence is very powerful, especially if their side tries to paint themselves as a stable family unit for the child. Then she looked at me directly. But I have to ask, are you truly ready for this fight? It won't be over in a week. They might pressure you, spread rumors, or try to blame you. They might even use your son as a bargaining chip. I looked at the files on the table and thought of Leo's face the night before as he hugged me goodnight. I'm ready, I said, my voice so firm it surprised even me. After that, things moved quickly. Miss Albright's team compiled the documents, created a timeline, prepared a formal demand letter for the debt, and drafted the custody petition. We didn't send it out immediately. I wanted to wait for the right moment, and that moment came sooner than I expected. On a Friday evening, my mother-in-law called me, her voice deliberately sweet. Clara, are you free this Sunday? I was thinking you could come over for dinner. We should talk about Leo, have a nice chat. I could practically hear the thoughts behind her words. They didn't want a nice chat. They wanted to persuade me to back down. Yes, I can make it, I replied calmly. I'll be there. On Sunday, I dressed in the simplest outfit I owned, a cream-colored silk blouse and black trousers. I wasn't trying to look like a victim or a warrior. I was just myself in a version that was no longer afraid of anyone. As I walked into that house, the same scent of air freshener filled the air. Everything looked grand, serene, and classy, but I knew it was all just a stage. At the dining table were my father-in-law, my mother-in-law, Ethan, and his sister. A full house, as if they had gathered for a family tribunal. As soon as I sat down, my mother-in-law began. About what happened. I don't want to make a big deal out of it. Leo needs a stable home. And you're so busy with work, can you really raise a child on your own? Ethan immediately chimed in. I'm not trying to keep you from seeing him, but it's better for Leo to live here. Everything is set up for him. I smiled faintly. Set up in what way? My father-in-law answered in a stern voice. Set up in every way. Financially, educationally, with people to care for him. I looked at each of them one by one and asked slowly, with whose money? The atmosphere at the table froze. I placed a thin file on the table. If we're going to talk about being prepared, let's start with the truth. This family owes me a total of $2.5 million. And you still want me to continue paying for my son's expenses while Ethan is supporting a mistress and another child. The water glass in Ethan's sister's hand nearly slipped. My mother-in-law's face went white. She quickly said, "That woman means nothing. If she means nothing," I shot back, "then why are you paying her monthly condo rent?" Ethan shot up from his chair. "Clara, that's enough." I looked up at him. "It's not enough. It's not even close." Then I pulled out another set of documents. This time it wasn't just defense. It was the polite declaration of war. I remember every second of the moment I opened that file on the dining table. The soft rustle of paper sounded like a thunderclap to the people frozen around the table. I laid out copies of bank statements and debt summaries in front of them one by one without rushing. My mother-in-law was the first to snatch the papers. Her perfectly made-up face turned ashen. "What is this? What have you done?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I've been gathering information," I replied. "Information I should have gathered a long time ago." Ethan grabbed the documents from his mother's hand and scanned them quickly. His eyes darted across the numbers before he looked up at me, furious. "You're going to be petty about money now," I almost laughed out loud. "Petty $2. $5 million, 5 years of child-related expenses, and being used as a personal ATM. And you still call that petty?" I leaned back in my chair. I suppose it's easy for someone who's never had to earn his own money to say that. My father-in-law's face darkened. "Don't be disrespectful." If speaking the truth sounds disrespectful, it's probably because the truth isn't very pleasant, I said. The dining room fell silent for a moment, the only sound being the clatter of silverware as the maid quickly excused herself as if she knew an explosion was coming. Ethan's sister tried to play mediator. "Clara, can we talk about the money later? The most important thing right now is Leo." "You're right, the most important thing is Leo," I agreed, turning to her. "Which is why I will not allow my son to grow up in a house that thinks infidelity is a minor issue and exploiting a woman is normal." Ethan slammed his fist on the table. "Enough," but I didn't flinch anymore. "It's not enough," I said, my voice so cold it surprised even me. "I've been quiet for far too long." I took out my phone and played the audio clip Mia had given me. My mother-in-law's voice echoed clearly in the dining room. "I'll accept my grandchild, but I won't accept its mother." When the recording ended, my mother-in-law's face was frozen as if she'd been slapped. She turned to Ethan. "Ethan, this. I know whose voice that is," I cut in. "And I have plenty more." Ethan looked at me as if seeing me for the first time. He began speaking slowly, trying to soften his tone. Clara, can we just talk about this? Just the two of us? We don't have to make it a huge mess. I shook my head. It became a huge mess the day you took your mistress for her first prenatal appointment. I just stopped pretending I didn't see it. My father-in-law tried to regain control. All right, let's do this. As for the money, if there's a misunderstanding, we can review it later. But regarding Leo, we really want you to think about the child's best interest. I met his gaze. Then let's really think about his best interest. A child should be with someone who has time for him, respects him, and doesn't use him as a prop for public image. Not in a house that expects his mother to pay for everything while trying to take him away from her. My mother-in-law's voice rose. We're not taking him, we're just concerned that you work all day. How will you take care of him? Who paid for the nanny all these years? I asked. She froze. Who pays for his school? Who pays for his health insurance? Who takes Leo to the doctor when he's sick? Who knows what he's allergic to? What his favorite bedtime story is? What loud noises scare him? No one answered because the person who knew the answers best was me. Ethan tried to recover. I'm his father, too. But how many times have you actually performed that role? I shot back. Do you remember the last time Leo was hospitalized? Were you there for his last vaccination? Did you go to his school play when they invited parents? He pursed his lips silent. You've done nothing, I continued. And now you're going to claim you're a prepared father? Why? Because you're about to have another child. That line hit its mark. His face flushed red. Ethan's sister quickly interjected, Don't be so harsh. The child might hear. I glanced toward the door to the inner rooms. Leo isn't here today. I made sure of it. I would never let my son sit and listen to adults use him as a bargaining chip at the dinner table. I gathered my files back into my bag. I will be filing for sole custody of Leo. As for the debt, I'm giving you 30 days before a formal demand is sent. And from this point forward, I will no longer be responsible for any of this family's expenses. My mother-in-law stood up abruptly. You can't do this, I can, I said. And I should have done it a long time ago. Ethan walked around the table to stand in front of me. His face was rigid, but for the first time I saw a flicker of panic in his eyes. You want to destroy me, don't you? I rose to my feet and met his gaze up close. No, I'm just done helping you hide how broken you already are. I picked up my purse, ready to leave, but before I reached the door, my mother-in-law's trembling voice followed me. Clara, if you do this, Ethan's reputation will be ruined. What will your son get out of that? I stopped and turned back to deliver my final line of the day. My son will get his mother back. A mother who no longer has to finance an entire family. I walked out of the house and didn't look back. The moment I was in my car, I let out a long breath. My hands were still shaking slightly. No matter how prepared I was, confronting the entire family at once was not easy. But deep down, I felt strangely light, like someone who had been carrying a heavy stone for years and had finally been able to drop it. That night, I returned to my own condo. Leo ran to hug my legs the moment I walked in. He had just had his bath, and the soft scent of baby powder instantly softened my heart. Mommy, were you tired today? I knelt down and hugged him tightly. A little, honey. But Mommy's better now. Leo put his small hand on my cheek. It's okay, Mommy. I'm here with you. That simple sentence brought hot tears to my eyes. Sometimes a mother's entire world can be healed by a few short words from her child. But I had yet to find out that after I cut off their funding and walked away, they would retaliate much faster than I thought. And this time, they weren't just going to play games with the law. They were going to play with the heart of a 5-year-old boy. After that day, Ethan's family went silent for 3 days. It was an unnerving silence. No calls from my mother-in-law, no texts from Ethan, no one sent to pressure or feign an apology. But I knew their type. Silence wasn't surrender. It was the time they took to plot their revenge. On Thursday morning, I was in a glass-walled conference room at my firm when my phone started vibrating non-stop on the table. The caller ID showed 3 missed calls from Leo's school. My heart pounded as I excused myself to take the call. Miss, Clara, Leo is missing from his classroom. My world stopped for a split second. Missing? What do you mean missing? I asked, my voice so loud that people outside the room turned to look. The school secretary quickly explained that during the lunch break, someone had informed the teacher that Leo's grandmother was picking him up for a family emergency. However, the school checked its records and found no prior notification from me. The person who took Leo was the family's old driver. I barely heard the rest. I grabbed my bag, ran to the elevator, and called Ethan at least 10 times on the way. He didn't pick up. I drove straight to their house. The front gate was open as if nothing was wrong. I hurried inside, startling the housekeeper. When I reached the living room, I saw Leo sitting on the carpet playing with his blocks while my mother-in-law fed him pieces of fruit as if it were just another ordinary afternoon. Rage boiled inside me. What is the meaning of this? My mother-in-law turned slowly, her expression so calm it was chilling. Oh, Clara, you're here. Leo wanted to see his grandma, so I had him picked up. I walked over and pulled Leo into a tight hug. The little boy looked up at me, his eyes innocent, completely unaware of the terrible game the adults were playing. Who gave you permission to take my son out of school? He's my grandson too, she replied. But I am his legal guardian. My father-in-law came down the stairs just then. Don't make a scene. You'll scare the child. I turned to him, unable to believe my ears. You abducted my son from school and you're telling me not to make a scene. Ethan emerged from his home office looking completely unfazed. You're overreacting. My mother just picked up her grandson. I looked at his face and knew instantly this was a calculated move. It wasn't a misunderstanding or a mistake. It was a test to see if I would back down. I knelt and asked Leo softly, Honey, who told you had to go with Grandma? Leo answered innocently. Grandma said, Mommy was busy and that I would sleep over at her house tonight. My heart clenched. This wasn't just taking a child without permission. It was planting the idea in his head that I didn't have time for him. I took a deep breath, trying not to explode in front of Leo. Okay, well, I'm here to pick him up now. My mother-in-law put down the spoon. No, Leo is staying here tonight. I looked up slowly. What did you say? I said he should get reacquainted with this house. Because if the court rules in our favor, stop right there, I cut her off. I took out my phone and started recording a video, making it obvious. Everyone's expression changed instantly. I am now recording audio and video as evidence, I said calmly. I am here to retrieve my son from this residence. If anyone obstructs me, I will consider it unlawful restraint of a minor. Ethan stepped forward. Clara, don't be crazy. I pointed the camera at him. Then, don't do crazy things. Whether it was because he was shocked or because he never imagined I'd play hardball like this, Ethan froze. I seized the opportunity, took Leo's hand, and walked him straight out of the house. As we passed through the door, I heard my mother-in-law shout after me, If you do this, Leo will hate you. I didn't turn back. I was terrified that if I did, I might lose control. That night I took Leo to my own condo and never returned to our old home. I called Miss Albright, immediately sent her the video, and had the legal team file for an emergency temporary protection order for Leo the next morning. Miss Albright's voice was clear over the phone. They made a mistake. This is proof that they are willing to use psychological tactics on a child to pressure the mother. After the call, I sat and watched Leo sleeping in his small temporary bed. His face was so innocent, unaware of the battle the adults were waging over him. I gently stroked his hair and tears began to fall silently. The thing I had always feared wasn't public shame, losing money, or starting over. It was my child becoming a battleground. The next day, I arranged for Leo's temporary transfer to another branch of his school, with much stricter security. I submitted a list of only 3 people authorized to pick him up: me, my sister, and a new driver I hired myself. That afternoon, Ethan finally called. The moment I answered, he spoke in a low, threatening tone. You're playing rough. Not as rough as what you started with my son, I replied coolly. Leo is my son too. Then start acting like a father. There was a pause on the other end before his tone shifted. Clara, we don't have to destroy each other like this. I'll agree to let you have primary custody, but you have to keep helping with the money. My family is in real trouble. I closed my eyes slowly. There it was. In the end, what he truly cared about was still the money. Your family's problems are no longer my responsibility. If you don't help, I can't manage. Then perhaps you should try taking responsibility for your own life for once, I said and hung up. A few hours later, I received a text from an unknown number. It was a picture of Mia in a hospital bed, with an IV in her arm. A short message followed, I'm under a lot of stress. He just told me he's cutting all of my expenses because you won't give his family money anymore. I read the message and a chill ran down my spine. It meant that since I had cut them off, Ethan's family was truly unable to stay afloat. And the closer they got to the edge, the more dangerous they would become. I knew Ethan's family had debt, but I never imagined it was this catastrophic. After the incident at the school, Miss Albright advised me to conduct a thorough investigation into their assets and liabilities. If the custody case proceeded, The court would consider the overall stability of the child's potential home environment, including its financial health. Using my connections in the banking and real estate industries, I legally accessed public records and conducted due diligence. The picture that emerged was more shocking than I had ever guessed. The grand house they were so proud of was under a second mortgage. Ethan's furniture gallery was behind on taxes. One of their 2 European cars had 3 months of overdue payments. My father-in-law had co-signed on several more multi-million-dollar loans for old friends. And most importantly, off-the-books lenders had started calling and sending people to collect. I sat in my office staring at the reports, and suddenly everything became crystal clear. They didn't want custody of Leo because they loved him. They needed the image of a stable family to maintain their social standing and for business negotiations. And on the other hand, they needed to keep me tied to them through expenses, to continue using me as their source of funds. Ethan wasn't confident he could raise a child. He was only confident that with Leo in his house, he could still squeeze money out of me. My fists clenched. How deeply selfish could people be? That evening, I met with Mia again. This time we met at a small prenatal clinic. She looked gaunt, her face pale, and her eyes red from crying. He came to see me last night, Mia said, her hands still trembling. He told me if I really loved him, I needed to help him save money because he was having financial problems. Did he ever tell you about money problems before this? I asked. She shook her head. Never. He always told me his family had multiple businesses and plenty of money that I never had to worry about the baby. I looked at her and couldn't help but feel a pang of pity. This woman had been used as a temporary escape for a man, and now she was being cast aside because he could no longer afford to maintain his lies. I have something else for you, Mia said, handing me a small envelope. Inside were copies of the condo lease transfer records and photos of some business documents bearing the logo of Ethan's company. I only had to look at a few pages before my heart sank. Ethan had been taking money from the company account to pay for Mia's rent and expenses, logging it as client entertainment and showroom design fees. This wasn't just infidelity. It was potentially corporate embezzlement. I took pictures when he asked me to hold his documents, Mia said softly. I didn't understand it then, but when he started getting irritable later on, I kept them. I accepted the envelope wordlessly. This was escalating beyond a family law case. It was now touching on business fraud and his financial credibility. Mia, listen to me, I said clearly. If this gets bigger, you could be called to testify. Are you prepared for that? She was quiet for a long time before nodding. I'm ready. I don't want to be fooled by him anymore. On my way back, I received a call from the accounting firm that used to handle the books for Ethan's gallery. The owner, a middle-aged man named Mr. Davies, had spoken to me several times about tax documents. Miss Clara, he began, his voice hesitant. I wasn't sure if I should call you, but I know you used to oversee the gallery's accounts. Is something wrong? The gallery is several months behind on my fees. And there are some documents I wanted to confirm because if there's an IRS audit later, I don't want to be the only one held responsible. I stopped walking. What kind of documents? He lowered his voice. There are several expense receipts that look irregular. Some are for resorts, a women's hospital, and residential rent, but they were all logged as business travel. I asked Ethan about it, and he told me you knew all about it. I closed my eyes slowly. Of course. Ethan had used my name again. I did not know, I said, and please keep all of those documents. Do not destroy anything. After hanging up, I immediately called Miss Albright and forwarded the new information. She listened silently before saying, Clara, I have to be direct. At this point, your ex-husband isn't just an unfaithful spouse anymore. He's someone who may have committed embezzlement and falsified documents. If he's cornered, he might try to pin the blame on you since you used to help with his finances. That sentence sent a chill down my spine. It was true. I had helped. I had co-signed on some things. I had trusted him. That meant if Ethan chose to save himself, he could try to make me an accomplice. I didn't sleep at all that night. Not because I was scared, but because I was beginning to see clearly that the man I had spent years of my life with wasn't just selfish or a philanderer. He was capable of destroying my entire life to save himself. The next morning, my fear began to materialize. My company's HR department called to inform me that an anonymous complaint had been sent to the executive board, alleging that I was involved in embezzling funds from my husband's company and may have ethical conflicts in my sense. Our role. I stood in front of the mirror in my dressing room looking at my pale face. Ethan had started playing dirty, and he wasn't just aiming for my son or my money. He was coming for my career. My job was the one thing I had always been able to control. No matter how messy my marriage became, no matter what biting remarks I had to endure at home, I still had my desk, my spreadsheets, my budget plans, and a team that trusted my abilities. My work reminded me that I still had value in a world where that family tried to devalue me every day. So, the day my company called me in for a meeting about the complaint, I knew Ethan was striking at my core. The small conference room on the 20th floor was silent. HR, my direct supervisor, and the company's legal counsel were all there. The anonymous letter was on the table. Its language was polite, but its intent was clear. The complainant alleged that I had used my position to help conceal financial irregularities in my husband's family business, suggesting unethical conduct, unbecoming of a VP of finance. The Clara from 2 years ago would have cried. But now I simply requested a copy of the letter and answered every question systematically. I explained that I had no signing authority in Ethan's company, that I had only occasionally assisted with their systems as a spouse, and that I had no financial stake in the business. I clarified that upon discovering irregularities, I had already retained legal counsel to take action. Then I placed my own evidence file on the table, proof of my wire transfers as a creditor, text messages, where Ethan had asked to borrow money, and a record of my appointments with my lawyer dated well before the complaint letter was ever sent. The company's lawyer reviewed the documents and looked up. "You came very prepared," he remarked. "I had to," I replied. I knew a man like him wouldn't keep this fight within the family. The meeting lasted over an hour. In the end, my supervisor stated clearly that the company would not act on anonymous, unsubstantiated claims, and that I would continue in my role as usual. They even offered the assistance of the corporate legal team if my name was dragged through the mud again in a way that affected the company's reputation. I thanked them politely, but as I walked out of the conference room, my legs felt weak. I went into the restroom, locked myself in a stall, leaned against the wall, and closed my eyes. It wasn't because I was afraid of being fired. It was the stark realization that Ethan was willing to burn down my future without a second thought. I took out my phone and sent him a single text. "Stay away from my career." He read it instantly but didn't reply. That afternoon, the receptionist called to inform me that someone was here to see me without an appointment. I went down to the lobby and found Ethan dressed in a gray suit. He still looked handsome. A stranger would have thought he was a composed, successful businessman. But I could see the emptiness inside him. "What are you doing here?" I asked. He gave a faint smile. "I wanted to talk civilized." "Is sending anonymous complaints to my company your idea of civilized?" He raised his eyebrows as if surprised. "Who said that was me?" I just looked at him. We both knew the answer. There was no need for theater. Ethan sighed. "Clara, we used to love each other. Why does it have to be like this?" I scoffed. The person who started destroying everything is always the one who asks why the other person won't just endure it. I cut him off. "If you have something to say, say it. I don't have much time." He paused, then lowered his voice. "On the business? I just need a little more time. You know things are bad. If my company's finances are exposed, I'll be ruined. And how does that involve me?" He stared at me. "If I'm ruined, Leo will have a father with nothing. Leo has a mother who is more than capable of providing for him," I retorted instantly. Ethan's expression hardened. He gritted his teeth and said the words that revealed his true nature. "If you agree to help me, I'll agree to end everything peacefully. But if you don't think for a second I'll let you get our son that easily." I looked at him motionless. The image of the man who had held my hand on our wedding day was gone. In his place was a stranger willing to bargain with his own child like a piece of property. "Then I'll see you in court," I said. I turned to walk away, but he grabbed my wrist hard enough to hurt. "Clara," I yanked my hand back and took a step away. "Don't you ever touch me again." My voice was so cold that he let go automatically. People in the lobby were starting to stare. Seeing this, Ethan backed off his face, a mask of frustration. I didn't want to prolong the scene, so I walked back to the elevators without a backward glance. That night, I came home to find my older sister waiting for me. She'd brought food and told me our parents were worried sick but didn't want to pressure me, so they sent her instead. I sat down, and after a few bites of food, I finally broke down and cried. My sister just rubbed my back, not asking questions, simply saying, "You're not alone in this, Clara." Her words made me cry harder. For so many years, I had tried to carry everything by myself. I had almost forgotten that I had a family who truly loved me. Later that night, my father called. His words were simple: "If you can't handle it, come home. You don't have to beat these people on your own." I lay in bed staring at the ceiling for a long time after that call. For the first time in months, I admitted to myself that I was exhausted. But within that exhaustion, something was growing stronger. It wasn't anger. It was the realization that I wasn't fighting to save my old life anymore. I was fighting to build a new one for my son and for myself. The next morning, that new life began to take another step forward when the most unexpected person came to my side, the old family driver. The former driver for Ethan's family was named Mr. Henderson. He had worked for them for over a decade, a quiet, polite man who always knew his place. He was the one who had driven me to the hospital when I was in labor with Leo, who had picked Leo up from school many times, and the one I had always felt sorry for because my mother-in-law treated him more like a machine than a isn't. I hadn't seen him since I moved out, as I had stopped using any of their staff. On Saturday morning, while I was taking Leo to his swimming lesson, my phone rang with a familiar number. It was Mr. Henderson. "Miss Clara," he said, "can I please speak with you? It's important." We met at a diner near the river. He was already there, sitting ramrod straight, looking around nervously as if afraid of being seen. When I sat down, he immediately apologized. "I'm sorry it took me so long to contact you. Is something wrong, Mr. Henderson?" He glanced around before lowering his voice. "I've quit, ma'am." I was taken aback. "Quit?" Mr. Henderson nodded. "They were 2 months behind on my salary. And things have been getting bad over there. I don't want to be involved anymore." I listened, silently, watching his eyes. He didn't seem interested in gossip or kicking them when they were down. He just seemed burdened by something he'd kept inside for too long. "I called you because of what happened with young Leo that day," he continued. "The day I picked him up from school. It was Mr. Ethan who gave the order. He told me to tell the school his grandmother sent me, and that if there were any problems to just get the boy in the car and back to the house quickly." I froze. I already knew it was intentional, but hearing it from the person who was there made it so much more real. "Mr. Henderson, would you be willing to testify to that?" I asked. He hesitated for a moment, then said, "If it's necessary, yes, I will." I feel for the boy. A child shouldn't be pulled back and forth like that. His answer warmed my heart. Amidst all the ugliness, there was still someone who saw that a child's well-being was more important than an adult's agenda. But Mr. Henderson wasn't finished. And about the other woman, I know about her too. I looked at him. I was the one who drove Mr. Ethan to see Miss Mia many times, sometimes to the hospital. I never said anything because I thought it was a family matter. But after what I saw them do to you, I don't think I should stay quiet anymore. He took out an old model smartphone and showed me some photos. There were pictures of Ethan smoking outside Mia's condo, a picture of my mother-in-law going into the same clinic, and most shockingly, a photo of my father-in-law talking to 2 menacing-looking men in the condo, Furniture Gallery's parking lot late at night. "What is that last one?" I asked. Mr. Henderson lowered his voice even more. "I'm not sure, ma'am. But I once overheard the old man talking about an off-the-books lender. After that, the house started getting a lot of collection calls." I looked at the photo, a heavy feeling settling in my gut. Everything was connecting faster than I thought. The mistress, the custody battle, the financial pressure, they weren't separate issues. They were the desperate thrashings of a family on the verge of total collapse. "Can you send me these files?" "Yes, ma'am. I've already backed them up." I thanked him sincerely and gave him my lawyer's number in case he needed to be contacted officially. Mr. Henderson promised his full cooperation. Before he left, he said something that stayed with me long after. "Miss Clara, I worked for that family for a long time. I never saw you do a single bad thing to anyone, but they all just thought you could endure forever. Maybe they forgot that when the quietest person finally stops enduring, they become the most formidable." I watched him leave, feeling like I was no longer alone in this fight. That afternoon, I sent all the new evidence to Miss Albright. She called me back almost immediately. "This is excellent," she said, her voice serious but pleased. "This witness is crucial both for the child endangerment aspect and for establishing a pattern of reckless behavior. We need to use this." When I asked, their side just filed a counterclaim stating that you are an unfit mother prone to emotional outbursts and are alienating the child from his father and grandparents. I had to laugh at the sheer audacity. The people who had a child taken from school without permission were now accusing me of keeping him from them. "The preliminary hearing is next week," Miss Albright said. "Be prepared, Clara. They might throw everything they have at you." I agreed and hung up. That evening, I took Leo to have dinner with my parents. Their small, cozy house was warmer than the mansion had ever been. My dad showed Leo the tomato plants he was growing in the backyard. My mom kept refilling his soup bowl. My sister sat patiently coloring with him. Looking at that scene, I had a profound realization. A good home for a child has nothing to do with the price of the furniture or the zip code. It has everything to do with the kind of people the child is surrounded by. On the way home, Leo fell asleep in his car seat. He mumbled in his sleep, "Mommy, don't make me go to Grandma's house alone again." My heart nearly broke. I reached over and held his small hand. "I promise, sweetie. I promise." That night, I went through my evidence files one more time, arranging everything in chronological order like a general preparing for the final battle. I knew the upcoming hearing wasn't just about custody anymore. It was the day the masks would finally come off in front of everyone. The day of the preliminary hearing arrived faster than I expected. I was up at 5 a.m. having barely slept. I put on a tailored navy blue suit I had set aside, my hair pulled back in a neat low bun. Everything about my appearance was designed to project stability and calm. I knew today wasn't about showing my pain. It was about showing that I was strong enough to be the rock my son needed. The family court was filled with people, each face etched with its own story of struggle. I walked beside Miss Albright to the waiting area, ignoring the stares from Ethan's side. My mother-in-law was dressed in a conservative silk dress, her makeup so perfectly applied she could have passed for a benevolent matriarch. My father-in-law wore a dark suit, his expression grim. Ethan looked a bit worn down, but he was still trying to maintain an air of confidence. He approached me before we were called in. "Clara, this is the last chance for us to settle this amicably," I replied without looking at him directly. "Your last chance was before you took your mistress for her ultrasound." He pursed his lips and retreated. When the hearing began, the courtroom was smaller and more austere than I had imagined. The atmosphere was heavy. Every word carried weight, every expression was noted. This was not a game. Ethan's side went first. His lawyer argued that the paternal family offered a more stable environment with multiple adults to care for the child. He painted me as a career-obsessed mother with limited time, who was actively alienating her son from his family. On the surface, it sounded plausible. If I didn't know the truth, I might have almost believed it. Then my mother-in-law took the stand. Her voice trembled just enough to sound sympathetic. She spoke of how much she loved her grandson, how she had cared for him since he was an infant, and how she never wanted to separate him from his mother. She just wanted him to have a complete environment. "Clara is a very capable woman," she said, "but she's so focused on her work. Sometimes she comes home so late. I just worry he's not getting the warmth he needs." I almost scoffed. The word warmth, coming from a woman who was using her grandson as a bargaining chip, was the height of irony. When it was Ethan's turn, he played the part of the grieving father quite well. He admitted he hadn't been responsible enough in the past, but was ready to change. He wanted a chance to be a father, and was heartbroken that his marriage had failed. Heartbroken, I thought. If he were truly heartbroken, we wouldn't be in court. Then it was my turn. Miss Albright started with simple, undeniable facts. Who was the primary financial provider for the child? Who took him to his medical appointments? Who was the main contact for the school? Whose name was listed as the primary legal guardian? Whose income was stable? Who had a consistent record of caregiving? The documents answered every one of those questions more eloquently than words ever could. Next, she moved to the topics they didn't want to touch: Ethan's behavior. The infidelity, the other woman's pregnancy, the financial irresponsibility, and the incident of taking Leo from school without permission. When the video from that day was played in the courtroom, my mother-in-law's face changed instantly. Ethan began to shift uncomfortably in his seat. But the real blow to their case was when Miss Albright called Mr. Henderson as a witness. He testified honestly and directly without embellishment. He simply recounted being ordered by Ethan to take the child from school without the mother's consent. He also confirmed that the family had known about the other woman for a long time and that he had driven Ethan to see her on multiple occasions. The silence in the room was suffocating. Ethan's lawyer tried to discredit him, suggesting he had been fired and therefore held a grudge. But Mr. Henderson simply replied, "I may have left because of unpaid wages, but everything I've said today is the truth." I saw the judge jot something down. His face was impassive, but it was enough to know the testimony had landed. Finally, I was called to testify. I stood there, took a deep breath, and answered every question clearly. I didn't claim to be perfect. I didn't cry for sympathy. I just told the truth. I have never tried to separate my son from his father, but I must protect him from an environment where he is used as a tool. It's true that I work hard, but I have built my entire life around my son. What I want is not a victory over my ex-husband, but security and safety for my child. I paused. A child should not be taken from his primary caregiver just because the other party has a bigger house. And a mother should not be forced to financially support both her child and the family of the man who cheated on her. After I finished, the only sound was the soft turning of a page from the judge's bench. That day's hearing wasn't a final verdict, but as I left the courtroom, I could feel that the scales had tipped. Ethan followed me out, his face a mask of rage. You brought in an outsider to slander my family. I looked at him coldly. He's not an outsider. He's a witness to the truth. He stepped closer. Don't think this is over. I didn't reply. I could see that this man wasn't angry about losing his son. He was angry about losing the game. But I never could have predicted what would happen next. After the hearing, it was Mia who would send me a piece of news that would turn this from a family dispute into the total demolition of Ethan's entire house of cards. The same night as the hearing, I got back to my condo around 9 p.m. Leo was already asleep with my sister watching over him. I was about to take a shower when I heard my phone buzz. A series of rapid-fire texts from Mia appeared on the screen. Clara, I need to see you. Urgently. It's not what anyone thinks. I'm so scared. I called her immediately. Her voice on the other end was a mess of sobs and gasps for air. What is it, Mia? I just got back from the hospital, she stammered. Is the baby okay? It's not just the baby, she said, her voice trembling. Ethan took me for more tests. The doctor recommended some advanced genetic screening. And one of the results. It's a problem. He got so angry. I frowned. What kind of problem? There was a pause, and then she blurted out the words that made me freeze. The doctor said there's a high probability that, based on the blood types and the conception timeline, it doesn't align with what he thought. I was silent for several seconds. What does that mean? Mia's voice broke completely. He suspects the baby might not be his. I sank onto my chair, my legs suddenly weak. This was beyond anything I could have imagined. And what's the truth? I asked directly. Are you sure? Mia burst into tears. I'm not sure, Clara. When I started seeing him, I was still in contact with my ex for a short time. I broke it off with the other guy, but the timing. It was so close. I was going to tell Ethan, but he rushed me to move into the condo so fast I never got the chance. I closed my eyes. It was a complete mess. Everyone had been lying to each other, using each other to get by. And in the middle of it all was an unborn child who would bear the consequences. Where is Ethan now? I asked. He just left. Before he left, he screamed at me, said I deceived him and his entire family. Then he called his mother right in front of me. He told her that if the baby isn't his, he won't pay for another thing, and he'll make sure I have no future in this city. I gritted my teeth. No matter what the truth was, a man like that always resorted to fear and intimidation with women first. Listen to me, Mia. Don't be alone tonight. Go to someone you trust or check into a hotel if you have to. We'll meet tomorrow. The next morning, we met at Miss Albright's law office. Mia brought the preliminary test results and told us everything that had happened. The worst part wasn't Ethan suspecting the baby wasn't his, but his family's reaction. My former mother-in-law had called and verbally abused Mia, calling her trash and ordering her to be out of the condo in 3 days. Ethan had texted her. If you tell anyone about this, I'll tell everyone you're a gold digger who planned this. I read the texts and could only shake my head. The man whose own infidelity had brought his family to ruin still believed he had the right to play the victim. Miss Albright listened to everything and then said calmly, if this is true, their side loses even more credibility. They were trying to use this pregnancy to build a narrative of Ethan as a father ready to start a new family. And if there were threats involved, that's another legal issue entirely. Mia hung her head and cried. I never wanted it to be like this. I looked at her and said, I believe you. If you were really a gold digger, you would never have come to me in the first place. She looked up, shocked as if she never expected to hear those words from me. But the truth was, I had no energy left to hate this woman. All I saw was someone who had made a mistake and was now being crushed by the same man and the same system that had tried to crush me. That afternoon, the news seemed to grow legs. Somehow it leaked. Ethan's sister called me, her voice tense. Clara, do you know about Mia? Know what I feigned ignorance. Stop playing games. Ethan is losing his mind and my parents are a wreck. And how is that my problem? I replied coolly. There was a 2-second pause before her tone changed. Look, for everything that happened before I apologize on behalf of my family. But please don't kick us while we're down. When they were trying to take my son, take my money, and ruin my career, no one seemed to care about kicking me while I was down. I haven't done anything to your family, I said. The thing that's destroying your family is the lies told by the people inside it. I hung up before she could respond. That evening, Ethan called. His voice had lost all its former confidence, replaced by a mix of fury and panic. You're behind this, aren't you? Behind what? The fact that your mistress might be pregnant with someone else's child. Clara, he yelled. Don't play dumb. The only person who has been playing with people's lives is you, not me, I said calmly. Listen, the Mia situation is a private matter. If you bring it into the custody case, who brought it in? I cut him off. Your family was the one who manufactured this new baby narrative to make you look like a stable father. Now that the story has changed, you'll just have to deal with it. The line went silent for so long I could hear his heavy breathing. Before he hung up, Ethan said in a low voice, You'll regret pushing me into a corner. I put the phone down and sat still. That wasn't the threat of a confident man. It was the threat of a man who was breaking and might do something stupid to pull others down with him. That night, I upgraded the security system at my condo, changed my route for dropping off and picking up Leo, and notified the school again that under no circumstances was Ethan's family to have unsupervised contact with him. I knew that the more the truth came out, the less control they would have over themselves. And I was right. Just 2 days later, the lenders came knocking on the front door of their grand mansion for the first time. I wasn't there to see it, but video from a neighbor and a detailed account from Mr. Henderson painted a vivid picture. On a Monday afternoon, 2 black vans pulled up in front of Ethan's house. 3 or 4 large men got out and stood at the gate. They weren't violent, but their presence was clearly menacing. The housekeeper ran inside to get my father-in-law, while my mother-in-law, who had been on her way to the salon, saw them and scurried back inside, her face pale. An event like this was rare in their exclusive gated community. Within 10 minutes, curtains were twitching in neighboring houses and cell phones were being raised to record. One of the men spoke loud enough for the neighborhood security guard to hear, If you don't pay today, send someone out to talk. Don't think you can hide forever. I listened to the audio clip and closed my eyes. The dignity and prestige that family had fought to maintain their entire lives was being stripped away in front of the whole neighborhood, all because they had run out of money to pay their debts. Ethan called me nearly 20 times that day. I didn't answer. On the last call, he sent a text. Help me this one last time and I'll agree to all your terms about Leo. I read it and felt more pity than anger. Even cornered, he was still trying to use his son as a bargaining chip. I didn't reply. An hour later, my mother-in-law called. When I answered, she was crying. Clara, please, I'm begging you. Help us just this once. I'm sorry for everything that happened before. I stood by my condo window, watching the traffic below, feeling nothing. This was the same woman who had once told me I wasn't good enough for her family, who had tried to take my son, who had treated me like a bank. And now she was begging. How much do you need? I asked, my voice flat. There was a pause, as she seemed to gather the courage to say the number. 1 million. Just to tide us over. As soon as we sell the other property, we'll pay you back. I actually laughed for the first time in months. You say that every time. I promise this time is different. Your family's promises have no value to me anymore. Her tone shifted from pleading to bitter. If you don't help, this family will be destroyed. This family was already destroyed, I said calmly. It was destroyed the day you all decided to cover up the truth. Not because I stopped helping. I hung up my hand, trembling slightly. Not from hesitation, but because I had finally reached the day where I could say no to these people without a single shred of guilt. That evening, the video of the lenders at their house was leaked to a local high society gossip page. Though names were redacted, everyone in their circle knew exactly whose house it was. The image of the perfect wealthy family was shattered instantly. The fallout was swift. Some of Ethan's business partners delayed their orders. My father-in-law's friends started keeping their distance. And the rumor about the mistress, whose baby might not even be Ethan's, began to spread through social circles like wildfire. I hadn't started the rumors, but I had no intention of stopping them. Sometimes the truth has its own momentum. When the time is right, it will seep out of every crack. That night, I got another text from Ethan's sister. Dad's in the hospital. His blood pressure shot up. Can you just pause the lawsuit for a while? I read the message, taking longer than usual. Yes, I felt sympathy for a sick person. But I also knew how skilled this family was at using other people's sympathy as a tool. I replied with a short, simple text, "I didn't make your father sick. Your family's debt did." Then I put my phone away and turned to Leo, who was building a puzzle on the floor. "Mommy, look, I finished the house." I went and sat beside him, looking at the picture of a brightly colored house in his small hands, a house with trees, open windows, and a blue sky. "It's beautiful, honey," I said. Leo looked up and smiled. "It's our house, right?" His words made my heart swell. Our house. It didn't have to be big or luxurious. It just had to be a place where no one had to be afraid of being used or abandoned. As Ethan's family was imploding, my own little home was coming into focus more and more clearly. But the story wasn't over yet, because when some people have nothing left to lose, they often do the most dangerous things. 3 nights later, Ethan was standing outside my condo in a state I had never seen before. It was a rainy night. I had just put Leo to bed and was checking emails in the living room when the building's front desk called. They informed me that a man was downstairs asking for me and refusing to leave. I asked who it was. "A Mr. Ethan," was the reply. My heart jumped not out of affection but out of a deep unease at him showing up unannounced. I asked to see the security camera footage. The image on the screen was of Ethan soaked by the rain, his shirt wrinkled, his hair a mess. He looked nothing like the meticulously put-together man I once knew. He looked like someone who hadn't slept in days. I told the front desk not to let him up, but 5 minutes later my phone rang. It was him. I hesitated, then answered. "Come down and talk to me," he said, his voice hoarse. "We have nothing to talk about. Clara, please." I don't know what made me decide to go down. Maybe I wanted to see with my own eyes what the arrogant, cold man looked like after everything had crumbled. I went down with a security guard standing at a discreet distance. Ethan turned the moment he saw me. His eyes were bloodshot, a mixture of anger, stress, and a weary sadness he could no longer hide. "What is it?" I asked. He looked at me for a long moment before saying slowly, "Help me." I stood still. It was the first time since I'd known him that I had heard a request from him without a trace of ego. But strangely, I didn't feel the satisfaction I thought I would. I just felt empty. "I've been helping you for years," I said. He looked down, raindrops dripping from his hair. I know I was wrong. You're only just realizing that now." He was silent. I pressed on. "What about my career, my son, the other woman, the debt? Are you sorry for all of it, or are you just sorry because there's no one left to bail you out?" My question seemed to hit him hard. He paled. After a long silence, Ethan finally said it outright. "I can't handle it anymore, Clara. The gallery is being audited, the lenders are calling every day my father's sick, my mother's a mess, and the whole thing with Mia. It's all falling apart. If you don't help me, I'm finished." "And why should I help you?" He looked up, his once arrogant eyes now filled with desperation. "Because we were a family once." I let out a soft, humorless laugh. "The family you cheated on? The family where you tried to trade your son for money? The family you reported to my job?" He gritted his teeth. "I'll agree to anything. Just withdraw the debt lawsuit and help me clear things with the lenders first." "No," I said instantly without a second of hesitation. Ethan looked stunned, as if he never expected such a direct refusal. He took a step closer, but the security guard moved with him and he stopped. "Are you really that heartless?" I looked at him, my expression unreadable. "No. I just stopped being a fool." That sentence seemed to wound him more than any insult could have. The wind and rain picked up. We stood under the same awning, yet we were worlds apart. Ethan lowered his voice again. "Then at least let me see my son." "You can see Leo within the framework the court decides," I stated clearly. "And you will do so in a suitable condition, not by showing up in the middle of the night like this." He closed his eyes as if finally defeated. Then he asked, his voice so quiet it was almost lost in the storm. "Did you ever really love me?" I paused, not expecting that question at this moment. Then I answered with the most honest words I could find. "Yes, I loved you very much." His lips tightened, his gaze wavering. "But the man I loved," I continued, "died a long time ago. He died the day he decided my loyalty was only valuable as a means to finance his family." Ethan said nothing more. I turned to go back inside, but I heard him say one last thing behind me. "If everything falls apart, I don't know how I'll go on." I paused for a fraction of a second, then answered without turning around. "Then you'll have to start by taking responsibility for what you've done, just like I've had to all along." That night I went back to my apartment, my hands cold, but my heart strangely peaceful, as if a final door had closed. I hadn't won. I had simply stopped letting him define my worth. 3 days later, the court issued a temporary order. Leo was to remain in my primary care. His father was granted visitation rights under specific conditions and was forbidden from removing him from school without my written consent. When I read the order, I cried silently, not just from joy but from the relief that my son was finally truly safer. But the story of Ethan's family was not yet over. Just 1 week after the court order, the IRS began a formal audit of his furniture gallery. And this time, I wasn't there to shield him from anything. The news of the IRS audit came faster than I expected. On Wednesday morning, as I was getting Leo's backpack ready for school, Miss Albright called to inform me that federal agents were on site at the furniture gallery, reviewing all accounting records. They were investigating suspicious expense claims and document inconsistencies issues that had been partially flagged by the external accounting firm trying to protect itself. I stood motionless by the shoe rack listening as my lawyer explained the potential for tax fraud, charges back taxes, and the impact this would have on the civil debt case. The system was now moving on its own. I didn't have to push anymore. Ethan called several times that day. I didn't answer. My father-in-law called. My mother-in-law called. Even Ethan's sister sent a long, pleading text message. I ignored them all. Not out of cruelty, but because I knew they weren't contacting me for a genuine apology. They were just looking for someone to help prop up the ruins of their collapsing house. That afternoon, I received another update from Mia. She had left the condo Ethan had rented for her and moved back to her aunt's place in another state to rest and wait for the baby's arrival. She sent a short text. "Thank you, Clara, for not abandoning me that day, even after what I did to you." I read it and replied simply, "Take care of yourself and your child." The anger I once felt for her was long gone, replaced by the conviction that no woman should be crushed by a man like that or a family system built on exploitation. 2 weeks later, the final custody ruling came down. I was granted sole legal and physical custody of Leo. Ethan was given scheduled visitation rights and ordered to pay child support based on a percentage of his income. The amount was small given his dire financial situation, but it was a clear legal affirmation that I was no longer obligated to pay his family anything. Leaving the courthouse that day, my mother-in-law sat motionless, looking as if she had aged 10 years. She didn't look at me. Ethan stood in a corner, his expression a strange mix of relief and devastation. He didn't approach me. The debt lawsuit continued, and eventually ended in a settlement pressured by the mountain of clear evidence. Ethan's family was forced to liquidate assets to pay their debts, their vacation home, one of the luxury cars, and a stock portfolio my father-in-law had held for years. A few months later, a for sale sign went up in front of the grand mansion. One day, I happened to be driving through the old neighborhood and saw the sign. I pulled over and just looked at it for a long time. In that house, I had tried so hard to fit in, to be patient, to please them, to believe that if I just gave enough one day, they would see my value. In the end, it was never about how much I gave. It was about the fact that they were never capable of valuing anyone but themselves. In the months that followed, my life slowly found its new rhythm. I moved into a small townhouse near Leo's school. It had a little front yard where he could plant things, ride his bike, and run around. My parents visited often. My sister was always there to help when I was stuck at work. And I started to laugh again, a real laugh, without forcing it. Ethan saw Leo sometimes on schedule, sometimes not. He would be late or ask to reschedule. But Leo began to understand the new boundaries of his life. He didn't ask for his dad as often as he used to. Children adapt to reality much faster than we think, as long as that reality is stable and gentle. One day, as we were watering the plants in our front yard, Leo asked me, "Mommy, why don't we live in the big house anymore?" I looked at my son, who at 6.5 was a little older, a little wiser, but his eyes were still, just as innocent. "Because a big house doesn't always mean it's a happy home, sweetie." Leo thought about that for a moment, then nodded. "Oh. So our house is smaller, but it has you and Grandpa and Grandma and Auntie. That's better, right?" I smiled through a film of tears. "Yes, honey, it's so much better." He laughed and ran off to check on his tomato plant. I sat there watching him, filled with a feeling I'd never had before. It wasn't triumph or revenge. It was peace. The peace of someone who had walked through fire and not only survived but had managed to lead herself and her child to safety. But there was one final chapter. A chapter I never thought I would see. The day my former mother-in-law came to my new home, not to yell, not to threaten, but to kneel and beg. It was a scorching Sunday afternoon. I was helping Leo with a small science project at our dining table when the doorbell rang. When I checked the security camera, I froze. Standing at my gate was my former mother-in-law. She was alone. No driver, no European car, no immaculate designer outfit. She wore a simple faded dress. Her face was haggard as if she hadn't slept in nights and had endured more than she could ever admit. I told Leo to stay in the living room and went to the front gate. "Is there something I can help you with?" She looked at me, her once icy eyes now red and raw. "Can we talk?" I hesitated, but opened the gate and gestured to a small bench in our front garden. I didn't invite her inside. She sat down slowly, looking around as if truly seeing my new life for the first time. The house was much smaller, but there were toys in the yard, a small pair of shoes by the door, and flowers blooming. It had more home in it than the mansion ever did. After a long silence, she spoke. "The house is nice." I didn't respond. She took a deep breath. "I've come to ask for your help." If I had heard those words a year ago, I would have been shocked. Now I just sat and listened. "Ethan. He's in a very bad place," she said slowly. "After the audit, he started drinking heavily. He barely comes home anymore. We sold the old house. We're renting a small condo now. His father's health hasn't improved." I watched her saying nothing. Her voice began to tremble. "I want you to talk to him. He won't listen to anyone. But he still talks about you. He still talks about Leo." I could hardly believe my ears. This woman was asking me to go save her son after her son had tried to destroy my life in every possible way. "You've come to the wrong person," I said flatly. She spoke quickly. "I know I have no right to ask. But he was once important to you." Was I cut in? "And that's over." My mother-in-law's lips tightened. Then suddenly she rose from the bench, stumbled forward, and fell to her knees in front of me. I recoiled not out of pity but in shock that the proudest person I had ever known could be brought to this. "I'm begging you," she said through tears. "Please help my son." I looked down at her for a long time. The woman who had told me I wasn't good enough, who had tried to take my child, who had seen me as nothing more than a source of money, was now kneeling on my lawn. In a movie, this would be the moment the heroine feels victorious. But in reality, I felt nothing of the sort. I only felt that everything had finally reached its end. I stood up and spoke slowly and clearly. "There was a day when I knelt and begged your family to stop hurting me. The day I found out Ethan was cheating. The day I begged you not to take my son from me. The day I pleaded with you to stop using me for money. But no one listened." Tears streamed down her face. "I was wrong. Yes, you were. But for some mistakes, an apology doesn't grant you the right to turn back time." I crouched slightly so we were at eye level. "I will not prevent Ethan from being a father to Leo. If he acts appropriately, he has a right to see his son according to the law. But I will not go back to propping up his life. And I will not bring myself or my child back into the wreckage of your family." She sobbed quietly, not arguing anymore. I delivered my final words as gently as I could. Maybe what Ethan needs isn't a savior. Maybe what he needs is to finally face the consequences of his own actions. After that, my mother-in-law slowly got to her feet. She looked so much older. Before she walked away, she turned back and said, her voice choked with tears, "I always thought I was winning because I kept my son on my side. But in the end, I just raised him to be broken." I said nothing because that sentence was the most honest confession a mother could make. When the gate closed, I stood there until Leo ran out to me. "Mommy, who was that?" I knelt and picked him up. "An old acquaintance, sweetie." Leo nodded, then rested his head on my shoulder and asked a simple question that was the answer to everything. "Mommy, are we going to stay together like this forever?" I hugged him tightly and answered without hesitation. "Yes, sweetie. We're going to stay together in a place where no one ever makes Mommy cry again." Leo giggled. "Then I'm going to grow enough tomatoes to fill the whole garden." I laughed through my tears and carried him back into our little house. A house not built with other people's money, not built on appearances or lies, but built on the strength of a mother who was willing to hurt, to fight, and to let go of everything she once thought was necessary in order to hold on to the only thing that truly mattered. People ask if I regret the divorce, if I regret not helping my former family when they fell. My answer is no, because the day I said, "Whoever wants to raise the child can pay for it themselves," it wasn't the statement of a heartless woman. It was the statement of a woman who finally understood that motherhood is not about endless, thankless sacrifice, and that true love never requires the destruction of yourself.